Hi everyone, this is Joshua Brown with Law Unboxed. I'm the attorney and founder of Law Unboxed. Today I wanted to talk to you about 6 legal issues to think about when starting your own business. Number 1, first, you're probably going to want to think about what entity structure you want. So if you choose a sole proprietorship, for example, it's as if you're doing business on your own as an individual. So you'll be liable for all the deals and liabilities that the business undertakes. A lot of people like to set up limited liability companies or corporations, and a big part of that is for that corporate protection. That's the barrier between the corporate or LLC shell that's formed and your personal assets. That's a good idea if you have more assets, if you want to protect those assets. But also understand that there is some more paperwork that's involved when you start to talk about limited liability companies, and even more when you're talking about corporations. You need to do, for example, with corporations, annual meetings and corporate filings. And also for limited liability companies, definitely in California, you need to pay a franchise tax board minimum franchise tax of $800 every year. And that's a minimum, okay? So know generally that information. Number 2, where to incorporate. It's a lot of people think this and a lot of people overthink this. When you're deciding, think about and try and find out what are different states' laws regarding the responsibilities of directors, officers, and shareholders. What are the tax implications? What's the difference between setting up or incorporating in one state versus registering as a foreign corporation in that state? For example, a lot of people will talk about Delaware as a good state to incorporate. There definitely are some benefits. Generally have a lower tax rate, and also they tend to not require so much as far as disclosing the identities of shareholders or directors. Also, Delaware has actually a pretty relatively complex and efficient corporate court called the Chancery Court. A lot of states, really don't have that like Delaware does, so those are some advantages. But on the flip side, you need to think about if you're doing business, say for example in California, if you incorporate in Delaware, you will actually be required to register as a foreign corporation in California and pay taxes. So if you are not located in Delaware and you're doing business in other states, realize that you are still on the hook for corporate filings, for taxes, and in the long run that may actually not make sense for you. You may be paying more by incorporating in Delaware. So there's quite a bit to think about there. Just make sure you get a full picture before you decide where to incorporate. Number 3, let's talk about shareholder liability. We did talk about it before. Think about protecting your personal assets. It's not a bad thing, it's a good thing. And realize that there is a way to lose that corporate protection in the case of, for example, limited liability companies or corporations. If you're not following corporate formalities, filing corporate documents in the right way and timely, if you're not paying taxes, for example, you could lose that corporate protection. It's an old term called piercing the corporate veil. A court can allow, for example, a plaintiff in a lawsuit to come after your personal assets, and you thought you had the protection, but you didn't. Because why? There's a number of factors that courts will look at. I talked about some of them, failing to follow corporate formalities. Another big one is commingling personal assets with business assets, or separate business entities' assets within the 2 accounts, or mixing those accounts. You don't want a record of odd transfers between different business accounts or between personal and business accounts. You don't want to use your business credit card for personal expenses. All indicators that you're kind of just using this business for your own personal whim, and maybe a reason for you to lose that protection. So know this information and research that, okay? Let's talk about number 4, compliance with some, with applicable regulations. It's useful to start by looking at or trying to figure out, do I want to provide goods or services? In the case that you provide goods, for example, one issue is taxes, right? In California, you're liable for paying a sales tax to the state if you sell personal property, if you sell goods. In that case, you need to obtain a seller's permit, which allows you to make sales in California and purchase resale inventory without payment of tax. But the sales tax on those items that you sell are imposed on you, and it's determined by the gross receipts from the sales. And that could be on an annual, quarterly, or monthly basis. It applies to wholesalers and retailers. If you're in that ballpark, then know that. Also, as far as compliance in the case of goods, We can go into federal regulations, for example, the Food and Drug Administration regulations. If you're, for example, selling food, drugs, cosmetics, dietary supplements, soaps, if you're in that category, you need to know these Federal Trade Commission laws regarding advertising. Again, back to the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, labeling of these products and talking about ingredients on those labels. You need to know this stuff. If you're importing and exporting, know the customs laws and any taxes that you're required to pay. Actually, if you sell services, on the other hand, as opposed to goods, do you require a license? What's the body that issues that license, and what are the set of laws that govern your use of that license? Is it a state code? Is it, for example, the California Business and Professions Code? Is it a federal set of laws? Know them. Are there industry norms? You need to know all of this stuff. It's quite a bit. Moving on to number 5, employment issues. Are you going to use employees or independent contractors? And I know a lot of you are maybe in the new stages or early stages of your business, and you want to save costs and you want to use independent contractors, and you don't want to pay benefits and insurance and health insurance, and I get that. But you need to know that if you misclassify employees as independent contractors, or they should be designated as employees in this case, if you do that, there could be harsh punishments and fines. I've seen this quite a bit, and I should say that, again, going back, if you misclassify an employee as an independent contractor, for example, the IRS can reevaluate or look at how you've classified this individual, and they'll often look at the issue of control. To what extent do you have control over their day-to-day work, basically? And there are a number of factors. We can talk about this for quite a while, but I'll just touch on a few. For example, do you provide the office space and or the equipment for the worker to do the work? Well, it's probably more likely in this case, I'm not going to make a determination, but it's more likely that this person is an employee versus an independent contractor. Do you set the hours that the person is to work on a task or on a day-to-day basis? Guess what? That's more likely an employee versus an independent contractor. Does the person work only for you and not for any others? That's probably an employee based on this kind of sliding scale test of factors. Or does the person advertise or put a resume out to the public and advertise their services to the public as an independent contractor? Well, that's a good indicator that it's an independent contractor. So again, there's quite a bit more factors than that, and you need to generally know how this test looks at these factors. I mentioned that there's penalties and fines for misclassifying workers as independent contractors. Also, you're required to provide workers' compensation for your employees, and if you end up not doing that, an independent contractor should have been, for example, classified as an employee, you could be on the hook for quite a bit of fines and punishments there retroactively. Number 6, insurance. This could save your business, and you need to probably talk with an insurance agent or broker. They need to go over with you your business plan, your goals, and the risks, basically the liabilities that the insurance may cover. There's a few we could talk about, right? So 1, general casualty liability. Think about third parties on your property. If there's a trip and fall, someone gets injured on your property, if one of your drivers is on the road and hits somebody, those could all be kind of covered under the umbrella of the general casualty liability policy. I also mentioned a driver, so maybe an auto policy. Property insurance for the property that you own, and business interruptions coverage in case, for example, there's a fire, your business is shut down for a few months. Don't you want income during those few months? That could be something you want to think about. And also these days we're talking about a lot more cyber coverage, right? Do you have a website? Do you obtain customers' data? Do you store that data? Is there a risk of that being breached or hacked into or stolen? Cyber coverage is pretty common these days, and you're going to want to have that. That's kind of the 6 points I want to talk about today. I'm looking forward to making some more of these videos, and we can go more in depth into some of these issues if you'd like. But if you enjoyed watching this video, please like the video, comment, and subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you guys soon, okay?